In 1993, a movie introduced the world to a predator, roughly 6 feet, 1.8 meters tall, fast enough to outrun a human in an open corridor, smart enough to test fences for weaknesses, to coordinate ambushes, to communicate with each other across a kitchen while hunting 2 children. It hunted in packs. It used strategy. It opened doors. It was, the movie told us, the most dangerous dinosaur that ever lived. Not the biggest, the smartest. And for 30 years, that image has been the image. The word Velociraptor now calls up something specific and terrifying in the imagination of almost everyone alive. That animal does not exist. It never did. The real Velociraptor is so different from the movie version that the 2 animals share almost nothing beyond a name. And the story of how we got it so wrong and what the real animal actually was is more interesting than the fiction. Not because the truth is less dramatic, but because it is stranger. Start with the size, because this is the most basic correction, and it is enormous. The Velociraptor of Jurassic Park stands roughly 6 feet, 1.8 meters tall at the hip, and is portrayed as being approximately the size of a large human. The real Velociraptor mongoliensis, the species that fossil hunters first described from the Gobi Desert of Mongolia in 1924, stood approximately 1.6 feet, 0.5 meters at the hip. Its total length, nose to tail tip, was around 6.8 feet, 2 meters. It weighed between 30 and 43 pounds, 14 and 20 kilograms. The animal that inspired one of cinema's most iconic predators was, in life, roughly the size of a turkey. Not a large turkey, a normal turkey. You could have held a Velociraptor under one arm. You could have looked down at it from standing height and seen the top of its skull. The jaws that the movie depicts as large enough to close around a human arm were in reality small enough that adult prey consisted largely of lizards, small mammals, and juvenile dinosaurs. The monster of Jurassic Park was based on a different animal entirely, Deinonychus, a larger North American dromaeosaurid, and the name Velociraptor was attached to it partly for dramatic effect, and partly because the script needed something specific. The real Velociraptor got the blame for something it could never have done. But the size correction, as dramatic as it is not the most important thing we got wrong. The feathers are. In 2007, a paper published in the journal Science described a remarkable specimen of Velociraptor mongoliensis. On the forearm of this fossil, researchers found quill knobs, small bumps on the surface of the ulnar bone, identical in structure and position to the quill knobs found on modern birds, where the feathers of the wing attached to the bone. Velociraptor had feathers, not suggested by related species, not inferred from phylogenetics, directly evidenced on the fossil itself. Quill knobs are only present on animals that have large, well-developed feathers attached to the forearm. The implication was immediate and total. The scaly reptilian Velociraptor of every movie, every toy, every museum reconstruction made before 2007 was wrong. The animal had feathers along its arms, likely along its body, and almost certainly had a feathered tail. It looked not like a scaled-up lizard, but like a large ground-running bird, something between a cassowary and a hawk, something feathered and fast and deeply strange to modern eyes. The arms, feathered as they were, could not fly. The quill knobs indicate large feathers were present, but the arm length and shoulder joint of Velociraptor are not consistent with powered flight. The feathers served other purposes: thermoregulation, display, possibly brooding eggs, the way modern birds use their wings to cover and warm a nest. The arms of Velociraptor were not vestigial. They were active structures covered in large feathers used for purposes that had nothing to do with catching prey. The killing was done by other means. The claw. This is the detail the movie got most dramatically wrong, and most dramatically right at the same time. The enlarged second toe claw of Velociraptor is real. It was held retracted off the ground during walking, preserved that way by the tendon structure of the foot, and it was large, curved, and sharply pointed, measuring approximately 2.6 inches, 6.7 centimeters along the outer curve. In the movie, it is used to slash, to open the belly of prey in a single devastating strike, to eviscerate. That interpretation was the dominant scientific view for years, and it is almost certainly wrong. A 2011 study analysed the geometry of the claw and the forces it could generate. The conclusion was that the claw was not designed for slashing. The curvature and the relative fragility of the tip under lateral stress make a slashing function unlikely. It would break. What the claw was designed for, based on its shape and the biomechanics of the foot, was gripping, pinning, holding prey against a surface while the jaws did the killing work. Exactly what modern raptors do. A hawk doesn't slash its prey with its talons, it grips. It pins the animal down and holds it immobile while the beak kills it. Velociraptor almost certainly hunted the same way. The enlarged claw was not a slashing weapon. It was a restraint. The prey was small enough to be pinned under a 35-pound, 16-kilogram body, held by a hooked claw and killed by a jaw that at that scale was more than adequate. This matters because it changes the entire predatory profile. Velociraptor was not a slashing, disemboweling monster. It was a precision hunter of small prey, using tools, feathers, claws, jaws in a coordinated way that resembles a modern bird of prey more than anything depicted in fiction. The intelligence. This is where the movie version becomes most seductive and most wrong. Jurassic Park's raptors test electric fences for weaknesses. They recognize that one of the humans is a distraction while another flanks. They communicate through clicks and calls. They adapt their strategy in real time. They are, the film argues, smarter than primates in some respects. The real Velociraptor had a brain-to-body ratio, an encephalization quotient, that was high for a non-avian dinosaur. By dinosaur standards, it was relatively smart. That qualification needs to sit in the sentence without being minimized. By dinosaur standards, compared to a Stegosaurus or an Ankylosaurus, Velociraptor's brain was sophisticated. Compared to a crow, a raven, or any modern raptor, it was not. The behaviors the movie depicts, fence testing, coordinated flanking, mid-hunt communication, and strategy adjustment, require a level of cognitive flexibility and social coordination that Velociraptor's brain structure does not support. It was a capable predator with better than average sensory processing and reaction time. It was not planning. It was not coordinating. It was hunting the way a large intelligent bird hunts, by instinct refined to a precise edge, not by deliberation. The pack hunting. This is the myth that has proven most persistent, and the evidence against it is now substantial. The image is specific. Multiple velociraptors coordinating an attack on a single large prey animal, flanking it, driving it toward other members of the group, working as a team. It is compelling precisely because it maps onto behaviors we recognize from wolves and African wild dogs and lions. Cooperative hunting is something we understand. It is also something for which there is essentially no fossil evidence in Velociraptor. The most important Velociraptor fossil in existence is the fighting dinosaurs specimen discovered in Mongolia in 1971. It preserves a Velociraptor and a Protoceratops locked in combat at the moment of death, buried together by a collapsing sand dune or a sudden sandstorm while the fight was still ongoing. The Velociraptor's claw is embedded in the throat region of the Protoceratops. The Protoceratops has the Velociraptor's arm in its beak, bent at an angle suggesting a broken bone. Two animals alone fighting, not a coordinated pack assault. A solitary Velociraptor attacking a Protoceratops, which was not small prey. Protoceratops adults reached roughly 400 pounds, 180 kilograms, nearly 10 times the weight of a Velociraptor. The specimen suggests not cooperative hunting, but something more desperate. a solitary animal that attacked prey far larger than was advisable and paid for it with its life. Beyond this specimen, no fossil evidence for Velociraptor pack hunting exists. No bone beds with multiple Velociraptor individuals around a single large prey carcass. No trackways showing coordinated movement of multiple animals toward a shared target. No evidence of communal dens or roosting sites that would suggest the kind of persistent social grouping that cooperative hunting requires. The pack hunting hypothesis was always an inference, drawn from the assumption that Velociraptor was smart enough to cooperate, and from the dramatic appeal of the image. The evidence, what we actually have in the rock, points to a more solitary animal that occasionally tackled prey too large for it, and sometimes lost. There is something else the fossil record preserves that rarely gets discussed. Velociraptor fossils show evidence of injury, healed wounds, bones that broke and fused back together at angles that tell you the animal kept moving, kept hunting, kept living after damage that should have been catastrophic for something its size. A broken arm in a solitary predator is a death sentence in most circumstances. The prey doesn't wait. The competitors don't slow down. And yet, the healed fractures exist. The animal survived. How it survived, whether it found carcasses to scavenge while it healed, whether there was any tolerance from others of its kind during recovery, we cannot say. What the bones tell us is that it was more resilient than the fragile, overwrought creature of popular imagination. It took damage and continued. It failed and recovered. That quality, persistence under pressure in a world that offered none, is more impressive than anything the movies gave it. The skull tells its own story. The jaws of Velociraptor were long and low, lined with approximately 28 teeth on each side, curved slightly backward. Not the massive bone-crushing jaws of a large theropod. Not the wide engulfing gape of a crocodilian. A precise, narrow jaw designed for gripping and puncturing rather than tearing large chunks from large prey. The jaw could not have opened wide enough to close around a human limb, the way the movies suggest. It was designed for something much smaller. The teeth were serrated on both edges, efficient for cutting through the skin and muscle of small animals, but not scaled for anything large enough to fight back significantly. The entire skull, from the rounded cranium that housed a brain larger than most dinosaurs of its size, to the narrow snout adapted for precision over power, reads as the skull of a specialist. An animal that hunted a specific category of prey in a specific way, and had been refined by millions of years of evolution to do that one thing with extraordinary efficiency. The world Velociraptor actually lived in is as far from the movie's jungle as the animal itself is from the movie's monster. Velociraptor mongoliensis lived in what is now the Gobi Desert of Mongolia during the late Cretaceous, approximately 75 to 71 million years ago. At that time, the region was not a lush jungle. It was a semi-arid, dune-rich environment, hot and dry, with seasonal vegetation and exposed sand formations. The fighting dinosaurs fossil was buried in those dunes. The red sandstone formations of the Diadocta Formation, where most Velociraptor fossils are found, preserve an environment of sand sheets, dunes and sparse vegetation, punctuated by streams and temporary water bodies during wet seasons. This was not a world of dense cover and ambush predation from shadow. It was an open, arid landscape where a small, fast, feathered predator ran down prey in the open or ambushed it at water sources. The environment shapes the animal. Understanding where Velociraptor actually lived dismantles the last visual elements of the movie version. There is a second species of Velociraptor that most people have never heard of. Velociraptor osmolski, described in 2008 from fragments found in Inner Mongolia, was larger than Mongoliensis and lived in a different environment. Its existence tells us that the genus was more diverse than a single species captured in a Hollywood script. The animal had range, variety, and ecological flexibility across the late Cretaceous of Central Asia. It was not one thing. It was a genus that adapted across environments and timescales in ways we are still mapping. The senses, because this is where the real animal earns back some of its reputation on different terms. Velociraptor's binocular vision was well developed. Its eyes faced forward with overlapping fields of view that provided genuine depth perception, critical for judging distances during a high-speed pursuit of small prey. The olfactory structures of its brain were proportionally large, indicating a strong sense of smell. Its hearing was likely acute, tuned to the frequencies produced by the small mammals and lizards that made up most of its diet. And there is evidence, from related dromaeosaurids with better preserved skulls, that the inner ear structure of these animals was sensitive to rapid head movements, the kind of precise spatial awareness that modern birds use during high-speed hunting. Velociraptor knew exactly where it was in three-dimensional space, at speed, under pressure. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, extraordinary, just not in the way the movies portrayed it. Here is the detail from the fossil record that changes the emotional register of the entire story. The fighting dinosaurs specimen again. Look at it differently this time. Not as evidence of predation, as evidence of desperation. A 35-pound, 16-kilogram animal attacking something nearly 10 times its weight. Not as part of a coordinated group with backup and strategy and the safety of numbers. Alone, in a desert, against an animal with a big jaw strong enough to break bone. The Velociraptor in that fossil was not the apex predator of its ecosystem. It was a small, feathered, mid-sized predator in a world full of things larger and more dangerous than itself. It lived on the edge of what was possible. It pushed against limits that sometimes killed it, and it kept hunting anyway. That animal is more interesting than the monster, and it is real. Velociraptor survived for approximately 4 million years in the fossil record. It occupied a specific ecological niche, small to medium prey, in a semi-arid environment, with precision and efficiency. It was not the apex of its world. It was part of a complex ecosystem that included much larger predators, much larger prey, and a climate that cycled between hospitable and brutal. It succeeded not through size or dominance, but through the particular set of tools it had: speed, the gripping claw, feathered arms it used for purposes beyond hunting, senses tuned to its environment, and a brain capable enough to process information faster than most of its competitors. What ended it was what ended almost everything. The Chicxulub impact, 66 million years ago, closed the file on Velociraptor along with every other non-avian dinosaur. The asteroid did not discriminate between the largest and the smallest. It ended the food chain at the base, and the small feathered predator of the Gobi dunes went with everything else. What survived, the birds, are its relatives. Every hawk that grips prey with curved talons and holds it pinned while the beak works. Every ground-running bird that chases small prey across open terrain. Every feathered animal with forward-facing eyes and acute hearing is something that Velociraptor would recognize across 71 million years of evolution. The line did not end. It changed shape. It learned to fly. It spread across every environment on the planet. But the basic toolkit, feathers, gripping feet, binocular vision, acute senses, fast processing, is the same toolkit Velociraptor carried through the dunes of Cretaceous Mongolia. The monster we invented is gone. The real animal is, in a different form, everywhere. We were wrong about Velociraptor in almost every particular. The size, the scales, the intelligence, the pack behavior, the slashing claw, the jungle. We built a cultural icon from the bones of a turkey-sized desert predator and called it the most dangerous thing that ever lived. The real animal would not have reached your knee. It would not have opened a door. It would not have coordinated an ambush or tested a fence for weaknesses. It would have been feathered and fast and focused entirely on the lizard or small mammal it was chasing across a red sand dune in what is now the Mongolian desert. It was not the monster we wanted. It was something rarer. A real animal, perfectly made for a world that no longer exists. Visible to us now only in bones that have spent 71 million years becoming stone. We owe it the accuracy we denied it for 30 years. We owe it the correct size, the correct feathers, the correct claw function, the correct environment. We owe it the truth of what it actually was, instead of the fiction of what we needed it to be. Small, feathered, precise, alone in the dunes, and extraordinary on its own terms.